Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated, underseen, or sometimes we just want to talk about them. Just me this week. So, as part of the relaunch, one of the things we're bringing in is we want to look at more of your suggestions as our listeners. And we thought the best way to do it was to do these little episodes and encourage you to send us your listener suggestions. So, alongside the other films we tackle every now and then, it'll be me on my own, maybe Jamie on his own sometimes as well, just tackling these episodes in shorter format, because no one wants to listen to us on our own prattle on for 45 minutes. So if you do want to suggest a film for us to look at, then drop us an email at filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. Tell us your suggestion, why you've picked it, why it's underrated or underseen, and a little bit about yourself as well. You can do it with a voice note or an email. Voice notes are great because you can get yourself heard on the podcast, but an email is great as well, which is just what our listener David did, as he got in touch to suggest Mr. Popper's Penguins from 2011. So spoiler warnings if you've not seen Mr. Popper's Penguins, if you've been saving that one. So plot-wise, really complicated this one. Jim Carrey plays Mr. Popper. He's a high-powered, career-orientated real estate developer who basically inherits five or six penguins from his recently deceased dad. As you'd expect in a family film, they wreak absolute havoc on his life, on his personal life, his professional life, and they ultimately teach him what's important in life and help him reconnect with his family. They thaw him, David. This is what they do, isn't it? Anyway, David says, "Hello, my name is David. I'm from Haywood in Lancashire. Know Haywood very well, David. Nice to have you getting in touch, and thank you very much for reaching out." David says he's been an avid listener of the podcast for a while now. His choice of underrated is Mr. Popper's Penguins, and that's due to the overall performance of the entire cast. Jim Carrey is his usual brilliant self, and Angela Lansbury, R.I.P., in her brief appearances steals almost every scene, and each penguin is a delight. Sure, it's your usual family film where everyone ends up happy, but it's not the reason it's underrated. It's because it's such a good, kind-hearted romp of a film that me and my partner love to watch constantly. It deserves so much more love, even if the child actors are good, and the constant P words by Pippi never fail to make me smile or laugh. Okay, let's get stuck in then. So, in terms of the structure of the episode, it's going to be the same as when we review new films or when we do normal episodes. We're going to start with what we liked and then go on to what we don't like, tackle the critical reception, see, is it underrated? So David says it's underrated. Is it indeed underrated? So in terms of this one, I had heard of it, but I'd never seen it. I do remember it coming out and being advertised. And I think because it is such a family film and I would have been sort of well into adulthood when it came out, I don't think I've thought about it since, really. But looking at the likes, there's plenty to like here. There really is. There's plenty to like here. It's a good, solid family film. So talking about it as a family film, whilst it might not be a classic for me, that's probably due to the fact that I'm a man in his mid-30s watching it, but it did a lot of the good stuff really, really well. Like I said, like a lot of good family stuff. Really great little instances of things like wordplay and language. It is based on a book from I think the 30s. So it has great wordplay and language, lots of abbreviation. Like David said in his sort of intro, there's a character in it called Pippi who says peas in every sentences, and it just works really well. It adds a real sort of a real charm to it. I do think it's quite well written, very reminiscent of a Roald Dahl or an Enid Blyton. Again, from a family film point of view, some good comedy. It does skew young. But that's not a bad thing for a family film. It's lots of slapstick, lots of, Jim Carrey getting hit in the nuts, Jim Carrey getting hit with a football, things like that. Plenty of penguins pooing jokes. So let's be honest, kids will probably love that for the most part. I can imagine kids, as I say, it skews a little young. I can imagine kids really quite enjoying this. So yeah, I think it's good as a family film. The CGI is pretty good for the most part, like anything from the time. There's the odd ropey bit for the most part. I think most of it's CGI. I imagine they did use real penguins for some of it, but CGI is probably a blend. But yeah, overall, I thought it would work really well as a family film. Jim, going on to the cast, Jim Carrey's great in this. He sort of does a watered down version of his usual 90s comedy shtick that he does. It is a little bit watered down because at this point he's way past things like Liar Liar and Yes Man and stuff like that, but he still does it pretty well. Like a lot of good family films, the cast in this, particularly adults, do commit enough to make it convincing. Like a lot of spoofs and things like that, if you play it seriously, it'll come off. Whereas if you constantly are playing it like, I know I'm in a family film, I know these kids are just kids or whatever. They're not just kids. Kids are smart, man. Like they really are. So I think they do that well, and that's probably down to some good direction as well in terms of the cast really commit. Like David said in his little intro, Angela Lansbury, the late great Angela Lansbury, she's in it probably a couple of times throughout, not loads, but she's so memorable when she's in it. She's in that same sort of Dick Van Dyke, Julie Andrews camp of absolute what is more than a national treasure is a global treasure, a filmic treasure, a Hollywood treasure, whatever you want to call it, and she is definitely that. Little highlight for me as well was Ophelia Lovibond, who she's been in all sorts. I think she's in a couple of British sitcoms. She's definitely in Guardians of the Galaxy as the collector's assistant. She's been in a few things, but she's great in this, and that she plays the character Pippa, who has the P trait. So I mean, the work has probably gone into her for her to get her head around all the tongue twisters she has to do in this, and she comes across really well as Mr. Popper's assistant. So yeah, overall, I think it's basically it's a strong formula. It's done well. That idea of a character thawing through extraordinary circumstances and kindness and filling the hole in his heart. It's got everything you expect from a good family film. It's got that warm wash. It's got the emotive music which sort of directs you in the way in the way that you should feel in a good sense in that way. The whole thing, Mr. Popper finding himself, plenty of heart, plenty of, like you say, decent comedy in there, simple and fantastical as well. So yeah, plenty to like in there. In terms of dislikes, look, there aren't loads, and they definitely outweigh the positives. But there's one or two things. Again, I will preface this with it is a family film that skews young, and I watched it on my own as a man in his I'll say 30s. I don't have to tell you more. I don't have to tell you more than that. I'm in my 30s. But it does skew a little young. But first thing is for me, and this could be because it skews young, or it could just be a general, what's happened with it. But some of the emotional beats don't land. So there's a little bit of a storyline about Mr. Popper's relationship with his dad and what his dad's trying to teach him. But his dad never particularly, I don't think, appears on screen. And there's a significant emotional, what they want to be an emotional payoff at the end to do with the restaurant and a table that they used to sit at. But it's not built up enough. So it's not built up enough in terms of why it's so significant to Mr. Popper as a character. And I think what they've sort of done is they can't decide between whether they want it to be an emotional beat or emotional payoff at the end or a twist. So they sort of go for both. And for me, they should have gone all out for the emotional beat side of things and the payoff side of things. It didn't need to be a twist. If they'd have shown us more at the beginning around his dad and their relationship, it is peppered all the way through it, but not enough that for me that emotional beat with the table in the restaurant landed. At the end, I do think there's probably a lack of a decent villain here. There are some villainous and antagonistic characters, but I think for a great family film, I think you really need to see a nasty villain get their comeuppance, and you don't really get loads of that in this. Clark Gregg's character, Agent Coulson, for people who like the Marvel films, is the closest thing to a villain. I actually think he's a little bit miscast. He's actually a little bit too likable for the role. Similarly with the partners at the property firm that Mr. Popper works for, they cast Philip Baker Hall and I think it's Dominic Chianese Jr. from Sopranos. They're too likable. They're almost too likable to the villains. So I think that was probably a little bit miscast, and I think you need more of a cackling villain. As I say, some of the comedy skews young, but there's nothing wrong with that. But obviously, if you're going to watch it as an adult, expect plenty of slapstick, getting hit in the nuts, and poo jokes as well. And then finally, and again, I will preface this with a slight trigger warning in case anyone's sensitive to subject matter like this. Basically, so I'm a child of divorce, and the film shows Mr. Popper and his wife getting back together at the end. And look, I know that's not impossible. I know that happens. But I do think that kids shouldn't be given unrealistic expectations around that. And I think if you're going to skew it so young with the comedy and the penguins and the niceness and all that, I think that probably should have been handled better, even if it just showed them reconciling and becoming friends rather than romantic love. But that is obviously very much based on my own personal experience. Like the benchmark for me with dealing with divorced parents in a family film is Mrs. Doubtfire. So yeah, just a few dislikes, but nothing massively criminal. It was perfectly watchable, sweet, and everything that's good about a family film, really. Okay, getting into the scores then. So I'll remind you how the scores work. So obviously, David's picked it because it's underrated. So we're going to look at the IMDb, the Rotten Tomatoes critics and audience, and then we'll average them out to get the sort of average score, and we'll have a little look at the box office as well. So on IMDb, it gets 6 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 48%, and the audience give it 53%, which averages out about 53%. I think that's quite harsh. I do think that's quite harsh, David. So I hope that's music to your ears. I think it's not an absolute classic for me, but there's plenty to like in there, and I definitely can see kids enjoying this as a family film and stuff like that. So I definitely think it's underrated. Box office wise, it grossed close to $200 million worldwide. I'm not sure how that fares against its budget, but I think, you know what? I think there's stuff in there to like. I don't think anyone's particularly talking about this as a family film, so I do wonder, well, whilst it did okay when it came out, I do think perhaps it's probably underseen as well. But for sure, David, you've picked it because it's underrated, and I think it is underrated. So thank you very much for suggesting it, and I hope that was the outcome that you wanted. Again, if you want to suggest a list of suggestions for us to do, contact us at the email address. It's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. Tell us your suggestion in an email or a voice note, what it is, why you picked it, and a little bit about yourself as well, just like David has done. We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, again, the email address is filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. You can contact us on pretty much all the widely used social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter/X, TikTok. If you just search for Just Films and that, you'll find us. We're out there. We're always putting stuff out there. So do get in touch with us. Always looking for ratings and reviews. It helps people find us. So if you can hit us up with a rating or review on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to it, if it's possible to rate us or review us and be kind, then that would be very much appreciated. Until next time, it's goodbye from me. Cheerio.